I'm sorry, somebody just walk out? Okay. Give me a few minutes, guys. Judge comes?
No, he's not.
No, he is not.
We have a quorum.
Yes, we do. Yes, Mr. White. I didn't get it. Yes. Yes. She just stepped outside.
Oh.
That was me, I moved that, sorry.
Well, no, we wanted to move and start having the meeting.
Okay. Let's do the pledge of allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we go any further, we have a new board member. It's Major?
Yes, sir.
Major White from the Pennsylvania State Police. He's the director of the academy, correct?
Yes, Bureau of Freedom Education.
Well, congratulations and welcome aboard.
Thank you, sir.
It's going to be fun. Let's start with roll call at the end, please.
Tracy Clauser, PCCD.
Wayne Howard, PCCD.
Rod Reddick, Indiana County Commissioner.
Fred Congino, Constable, Delaware County.
Sherry Leffler, Constable's Education and Training Program.
Julie Sokoloff, Constable, Montgomery County.
William White, Pennsylvania State Police.
John Fowle, PCCD.
Bob Merwine, PCCD.
Beth Romero, PCCD.
Okay, thank you all. As far as the agenda here, it has election of officers. Let's hold off on that if you don't mind for the time being. Action items, unapproved draft minutes. Anybody have any question on the minutes for last month? No? Do I hear a motion to accept?
Move to approve.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Unapproved financial report for May 11th. Beth?
Beth
I'm
Romero
so
will
sorry.
be. Good morning.
Hey, this is the fiscal report for the third quarter of the 2016-17 state fiscal year, and it's found on pages 10 to 15. Under receipts, the balance carried forward from the previous fiscal year was $3,378,619.71. Fees collected through the third quarter were $1,302,010.20. So the total funds available, including our estimated collections, is $5,187,316.71. Under expenditures and commitments, total cumulative expenditures as of March 31st, 2017 were $2,091,854.14, and the total cumulative expenditures and commitments as of March 31st, $6,111,965.74, and that includes $494,774.24 in administrative expenditures and commitments. The breakdown of those costs is on, and I probably didn't update my page number, page 12. And total uncommitted funds as of March 31st, 2017 is a negative $924,649.03.
Any questions? Do I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Seconded?
Second.
Favor? Opposed? Carried. Pass this one. Purchase order analysis, you already did that. Administrative cost breakdown, timesheet detail, constable fee collections, and again, gentlemen, I'm just going to put this out there. We know we just went over that real fast. You're going to see later on that it comes down, our training, our fund depends upon a lot of you guys working the warrants. Since we've lost a lot of warrants from a lot of these towns, we're going to ask you to try and pick it up a little because that helps us all along. Training fund projections, you already did. Instructor certifications. You want to do that?
That will be Wayne.
Wayne?
Okay, the first one you see in your packet is from IUP. It's for Alexander Ferganis. Requested topic is the general. Currently, he's a Pennsylvania State Constable. You can see his education level there. 12 years of law enforcement experience, 3 years as an instructor. He currently just completed his student teaching for Act 49, the instructor development. You can see the certifications that he has: NRA firearm, shotgun, instructor development. Staff would recommend Alexander Ferganis for the general topic. The second one from Indiana University is Jason Lauer. He is also a Pennsylvania State Constable. He has a master's degree. He graduated from California University of Pennsylvania. He has 2 years of law enforcement experience. Years of instructional experience is 0. Currently, he did his student teaching for the Act 49 instructor development. You can see his qualifications. Again, the NRA firearm, handgun. Staff would recommend Jason Lauer for instructor certification as well. The next one is from Temple University. Currently, Michael Gallagher. He's a current MDJ in Bucks County. He also spent 20 years as a PA State Constable. He has a high school education level, years of law enforcement experience, 20 years. He was a constable, less than a year instructional experience, however. Again, he went through the instructor, Act 49 instructor development. He completed his student teaching. Staff would also recommend Michael Gallagher for general and for the communication topics. The next one from Temple University is Michael Valora. His requested topic certification is for general. He worked with the National Park Service. He was a chief ranger. He has some college from St. Lawrence University, 16 years law enforcement experience, 8 years instructional experience. His last instructional assignments were with Temple University at the National Park Service seasonal law enforcement training, as well as the in-service training for the National Park Service. You can see the certifications, the federal law enforcement training, the use of force, basic instructors, simunitions. The staff would recommend Michael Valora for instructor certification for the topic of general. And the last one is Samuel Vinegar from Temple University. He's applying for the general instructor certification. Currently, he is a Pennsylvania State Deputy Constable. He has a bachelor's degree from Temple University, 1 year of law enforcement experience. He has less than a year of instructional experience. However, he did complete the student teaching for the Act 49 instructor development. That was in October of 2016. And the board would recommend that Samuel Vinegar be in an instructor certification for the topic of general. Any questions?
Do you have any questions? Do I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Seconded?
Speaking it to them all.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. This is, you two guys are going to talk it over here. Major, jump in.
We're the only. I'm gonna nudge him, say so moved every once in a while.
Instructor certification we just done, cost saving initiatives. Who's going to handle
I
that?
will handle that one. Program staff have met and discussed several cost-saving initiatives over the past several months. We met with the training delivery contractors on April 5th and also discussed these initiatives with them. We've highlighted basically the top 6 things that we would like to bring to the board for both discussion and action after we have some discussion on these. I'll just go down through them briefly. on these different initiatives that we're bringing forth. The first cost-saving initiative that we would like to discuss with the board for consideration is increasing class sizes. In 2014, or 2014, oh my gosh, what year am I in? 2017, we had scheduled 9 basic training classes, 2 of which were canceled. At this point in time for this training year, we had the class sizes at 25. By increasing the class sizes to 35 and decreasing the number of basics that will be scheduled during the year, we will be saving, we will have some cost savings there available that would we would be expending the money for. Also, we have a highlighted there for the continuing education classes. In 2017, we scheduled 63 Con Ed classes. Of those, we have canceled 11. There again, the class size is 25 for 2017. By increasing the class size to 35 in 2018, we will be able to almost cut the number of classes that will be offered in half to 37. With that, we can see a very significant savings there of almost $50,000, $49,230. By just increasing the class sizes for the basic trainings and the continuing education classes, we are estimating that we would have a savings of $97,390. So that would be cost saving initiative number 1. Cost saving initiative number 2 would be reducing the number of rounds that are made available for training purposes for the constables during basic firearms, annual firearms, and also advanced firearms. And we've laid this out here based upon the average cost of 26 cents per round. So currently for the basic firearms class, we allow 50 or 500 rounds for training purposes. Cutting that to 250 rounds would make a significant reduction in the amount of ammunition that we would be using. And you can see the calculations that staff provided there. It would go from $130 reduced to $65 per student for just by reducing the number of rounds, cutting it in half. If we have $65 per student times currently 20 students in a class, that would be $1,300. 11 is our average class of class numbers of basic firearms. There we would be saving almost $14,000 just by reducing for a basic firearms class. The second calculation there is for annual firearms, going from the current 300 rounds to, and again, cutting it in half to 150 rounds. Again, there you can see the reduction. It would go from the cost being $78 per student for the ammunition to $39, taking that times 20 students and then averaging out 55 annual firearms classes in a year. That would be a cost savings of $42,900. As far as the advanced firearms classes, they currently have 225 rounds allocated. We would go to 100 rounds. There again, you can see that reduction is almost in half. And there would be a cost savings across the board for 13 classes of around $4,000. The estimated cost savings going across all 3 firearms class types would be approximately $61,256.
Hey Sherry, I just wanted to say to the board, on the number of rounds, and the board I'm sure will have discussion on this, we may end up, those numbers may change slightly. As we look more at the curriculum, we may say instead of dropping it to 100 rounds for the advance, it goes to 125. But we wanted to pick some numbers to at least show the board, ammo is a big cost for us. So any kind of reduction is going to be a cost savings. But we just picked the middle road. We kind of cut things in half. But for a training purpose, it may end up being 125 rounds, or so we haven't gotten down to that far to actual how many rounds per stage and all that. So
yeah, and this is all very high level. And yeah, feel free, staff, also if you think of anything to chime in as well. Another
chime in at the end, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Another cost saving initiative, number 3, would be to eliminate the advanced firearms classes. Right now, the average class cost for an advanced firearms class is $7,634. If we have 12 advanced firearms classes right now, that's costing us about $91,000 a year. We would need to increase the number of annual firearms classes to accommodate those who had previously gone to the advanced. So we would need to add on some additional annual firearms classes. So what we did is we took the average class cost for an annual firearms class of $8,703. We would need approximately 7 classes to accommodate those guys from the advanced firearms classes. So we would still be expending around $60,000. So truly, by eliminating the advanced firearms classes, we would only be saving around $30,000 during that year.
But that's not counting, that 30,000 would be even lower because of the ammunition.
Correct.
So if you cancel the, I have to ask this now, I'm sorry. If you
That's
cancel the advanced firearms, we're maybe saving $25,000. Okay.
Right, and we didn't, we kept these separate because that way if you only chose to reduce ammo versus both.
Okay, I was.
So we didn't want to mix the,
Okay.
The other one.
What you're thinking?
Well, isn't the estimated savings based on the current cost per, based on ammunition? So if we're reducing the rounds of ammunition,
well, we could, there's 2 different things there.
Right.
Eliminating advanced firearms, because there's only 12 guys, a higher ratio of instructors. So you're reducing instructor costs, and then if we also did ammo, that's an add-on.
Oh, I understand what Rob's saying though. Rob's saying if the firearms, I mean, if we got rid of 225 rounds,
That would lower the average class cost.
Right.
which would increase the savings.
which
Correct.
would increase the savings. So
Correct.
instead of, you're right, Rob. I went backwards. So instead of 25,000, that should be 35,000.
Correct.
Okay.
If done in tandem.
If done together, but that's what we want
If
to
done
present them
together,
separately.
Okay.
And then cost saving initiative number 4 would be to eliminate the optional training classes. Now, I did provide also documentation on page 24 in relation to the optional training classes. Currently we have 5 classes scheduled. So eliminating the optional training classes, just cutting them out, would be a cost savings of $11,160. But now I did supply the supporting documentation because the board in the past has expressed their concerns with eliminating those because we do provide those certifications during the basic training class, and the board felt that it was important to provide those recertifications as well, to continue to provide those recertifications. So if you look on page 25, as you can see, we have increased the number of constables that have been attending over the past 4 or 5 years. In 2013, we were still at 2% of the constable population was attending the optional training classes. Now we are up in 2017 to about 5%, but that is still a very low percentage of the constable population that's taking advantage of these classes. So when staff were again talking about cost saving initiatives and where can we find places where we can, save money, that was one of the things that we had to come back to and revisit again because we have discussed it in the past. The board has expressed their concerns about it. However, there is still a savings that could be, obtained there. The 5th cost-saving initiative would be to eliminate the printed training schedule. This is a very small cost savings to the board or to the fund itself. But we felt that because technically it is a significant cost savings, but it's only like $1,900. But still, it's a savings that could be realized pretty easily by not sending out the printed schedule. We would still have it available, send it by email to everyone that is in our email group, but just the publication of that document is $1,900. Is it really necessary for us to print up 1,300 copies of that training schedule every year and send it out to everyone?
How many constables are getting these mailed out?
Right now, it's only around. I should have been ready for you, Fred, because I knew somebody was going to ask that.
Well, the biggest question is, and maybe I'm going to answer this to the board, is there are still some people that don't have computers.
Yep, they're still using the paper copy.
That's just not fair.
I've raised that a number of times in this meeting, that most counties do not have any rural connectivity whatsoever in technology. I'm going to use rural Indiana County as the example because I know about Indiana County. We have about 40% of our county is covered by optic fiber. The rest is a very slow dial-up kind of system. It's hard to believe in today's days that's where we are. But the reality is that's where we are. And my concern would be, how do you get that message out? Or do you have email accounts listed for everyone who would deserve a copy of the printed schedule? That's my question.
Yeah, and we're doing that now. You know, when the constable's registered in the system, they indicate do they want to receive U.S. mail or via email, and then they have to give us an email address. So we are sending out, you know, training bulletins and that stuff via email with a link to the document. But there are still guys who select U.S. mail, and we're still mailing training schedules or training bulletins to those. I don't know what the
Is
percentage
that the 1,900 you're talking about, John, then, the ones that are not on an email?
On email, and right, and when you look at it, you know, it's an insignificant amount of money in the big scheme of things, but the potential for the guy who's been relying on the printed schedule every year or the training bulletin, now it's a problem for him.
But now it would still be provided on our website. I mean, it would still be accessible to anyone that would want to print out a copy of the schedule.
But the problem is like
Is getting into the internet.
whether or not they have the
Yeah.
internet or the
Somehow.
availability. I mean, God's honest truth, we are so far in the hole. 1,900 is not going to kill us, and I don't
Yes.
want to hear that guys aren't able to get it. And you know,
Well, and that's why we brought this, as insignificant as the amount.
Yeah.
The issue is
Okay.
No,
important
it's
for the
fine, it's
board.
just that I think it's worthy of considering where the issues are.
okay. Because I did notice later on it says where the program says that separate votes can be taken on each initiative if necessary. So we'll discuss that when it comes. All right, go ahead. I'm
Now,
sorry.
just to answer your question, right now we have 1,555 registered active constables. So that means that they have a valid term of office on file with us. Of those, we only have 1,019 that have email as their preferred correspondence method. So it would still be
few hundred.
about 400 and some that we would be mailing out.
Yeah. And then next, in the next 10 years, a bunch of that number will drop.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
eventually, you guys will be all email, but in the meantime,
And I know it's very hard for us to mandate that because we do have those individuals that do not have internet access or
Yeah.
do not have a computer and those types of things. So
yeah, and we do have to accommodate it. But we'll discuss that with the separate votes. Go ahead.
So number 6 then, moving forward, is the removing the mandatory participation. That title is not correct in itself. What we're saying there is removing the mandatory participation that the board had put into place 2 years ago for the scenario trainings during the defensive tactics classes.
Defensive tactics. I was going to ask that question. The
Yes.
scenarios, I don't want to get rid of. They're the best thing.
No, the scenarios would remain in the training. However, the mandatory participation would be removed.
We'd go back to the way.
We'd go back to the way it was before.
But you mean just the physical?
Part of the problem is now we're on our second year. Next year will be the third year of that mandatory participation. And the board's caveat to that was there was no contact. So what happens is you end up training scenarios now for 3 years where everybody knows it's going to basically end up in a compliant subject.
Yeah.
There's no, at the Deputy Sheriff Academy, at the sim house, Deputy A goes in, he gets a compliant subject. The next guy goes in and he's in a fight for his life.
Right.
So now the training value starts to drop. If I know every year I'm doing scenarios that are always going to end in a compliant subject, I'm not paying attention as much. I'm not, the first year or two, guys, because they didn't know how it was going to go. But there comes a point where you can only do that so many times. And training value drops and, kind of defeats the purpose.
And if you look,
Major, I'm just real fast. Major, the reason you might not understand is we are independent contractors, we're self-employed, and it can't be mandatory to force these guys. If we get hurt, they're out of work, and there's no disability. And you're probably sitting there saying, why are,
I understand.
okay, so this is what is happening. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's
He-
okay.
He has no
Thank
idea
you.
what's going on.
And participation has come up over the years. The average age of the constables has dropped, as well as, I think more guys are understanding the value of, the training, and, the instructors do a good job of going, look, it's better to kind of feel sore after training than, get your butt handed to you on the street. So the participation has gone up compared to 10 years ago or whatever.
Yes.
So I think, going back to where it's optional, even then, constables were allowed to participate in scenarios they felt they could, participate in. The other issue is existing health issues,
But you're still, and that was just strictly though for the physical part. I mean, the other scenarios you have where
Correct.
Very informative, and especially to the young constables.
Right, there would still be scenarios,
Okay.
but now if it's optional, and then that also too allows a greater range of scenarios to be, presented, and the training value goes back up.
Okay.
And if you look at what I was going to say earlier, page 23, we did provide supporting documentation there, just going into this a little bit more. And as John stated, with the training value or the return on the training will start to diminish because they're going to know every scenario that's going to be presented to them. What we're coming with you as far as the cost saving initiative would be to reduce the number of instructors that are going to be needed to facilitate that scenario based mandatory participation. So that's the cost savings that we would realize from that, because we're not going to need as many instructors to be there for the mandatory participation.
Well, excuse me, but I thought we didn't pay for the instructors. I thought the schools paid for the instructors.
Yes, but then we reimburse the schools.
Okay, so you're saying their contract would lower by that?
Correct.
Okay,
And that would also decrease the average class cost as well.
okay.
Because right now, no, and that's you're allowed to ask questions, right?
Right, well, no, I know, I just, the other things there sounds like we pay the bill on. I always thought the contract for the school was the schools, but as long as.
No, we're paying for whatever services they provide, whether they got one instructor in front of the room or they, just like firearms, that's one of the issues is, 20 guys on the line, our ratio of 4 to 1, and depending on the class, schools know certain shooters, so they may bring in an additional instructor to watch a couple of guys who are, not, they need that extra coaching, so.
Okay.
And we did have a high student to instructor ratio because of the mandatory participation as well.
Okay.
That was placed in the curriculum.
Can the schools bill after the fact, or it's already in the contract?
The estimated costs are already in the
It's done.
contract.
They can't come back and say, oh, we needed to bring more instructors, we've got to bill you some more.
That is a possibility.
Oh.
That would be a
That's written in it.
possibility.
They're in the contract, when they submit a budget, that total amount they cannot exceed.
Okay.
So if that's a
Okay.
2-year budget, on a class to class, yes. And that's why we've never paid full price at the end. We always get money back.
Right.
Because a class is canceled or, it was a low enrollment, so they didn't need as many instructors. So it does vary a little bit. But yes, the total price of the contract they cannot exceed. So.
They were also pretty good about if there's an exceptional situation that they need to bring in an instructor, they contact staff here to talk about that before they go and bring that in. So.
And if need be, we can move money around from one line item to another line item if need be. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the cost savings here calculated based upon the 52 Con Ed classes, and then also 3 basic training classes, it would be estimated at about $10,000. We would realize a reduction in instructor travel expenses as well because we wouldn't need as many instructors traveling out to the classes.
Now, you're at the end where it says the program staff recommends. Is that the same as this discussion for the cost saving initiative?
No, that's different.
Okay,
That's different.
so you're asking us to
Just 1 through 6.
1 through 6, and
So,
And I don't want the board to feel pressure to vote on this today either.
Yeah, we can discuss it. and
You want to
come back.
discuss it and go to the next meeting to, finish the discussion or staff to provide additional information or whatever.
Yeah, I'd like to ask a couple of questions too.
Go ahead.
We went through it rather quickly, for those of us who don't spend every day on this, so we take our lead from the recommendation, but I really have a concern on the reducing the number of rounds. I know that's a large savings. Can you give me an idea of how that's going to affect certification of the individual? It just seems like when you start reducing rounds, you reduce the opportunity to be competent.
Right.
And I want to know what the balance is there, and does it change the schematic scoring of each fire, or how does that work, John? I don't understand the system.
Right, the number of rounds we're providing are purely training. From the beginning of the program, the constable always provides their own ammunition, 60 rounds for qualification. And of course they have to have.
This is all training.
This is all just training.
ammunition.
No certification.
Right, we
Correct.
do not provide, because they qualify with whatever ammunition they're going to carry on the street. So if they prefer, jacketed hollow point or, plus P, whatever ammunition they're carrying on the street, that's what they qualify with. We're providing them, a lot of just ball ammunition to do drills, malfunction drills, work on, trigger control, sight alignment, those things, the fundamentals. So even in the advanced course, because they come in, they don't get a practice. They come in, first thing they do, after safety and administrative stuff, they shoot the qual course. If you pass, then they spend the next 15 hours learning advanced things, multiple targets, moving and shooting, officer down, engagements. So the annual firearms class is literally Friday night review of safety, marksmanship stuff, administrative stuff. Saturday and Sunday is going through those drills again. And, staff have been out observing training, over the years, and you can see there are guys who need that. They need that day and a half because they're not shooting in between their annual qualification. There are other guys, they could probably step up and, shoot and qualify no problem. So we're providing them training rounds, and it would kind of be shifting more responsibility onto the constable to go out on their own. It's an individual skill. It's a perishable skill. It's something they need to keep up themselves. Our once a year, 14 hours of training drills isn't going to make them proficient on the street when they need it.
Well, let me go back then. If you have a different kind of range of skill coming into fire, do they all have the opportunities to fire off on those rounds just to fire, or are they doing it because they have a necessary need to improve their certification capabilities? I mean, who makes that decision?
It's up to the constable. That's why we introduced the advanced firearms. So if you score 88% or higher on your qualification, the following year you can sign up for the advanced firearms. And actually the advanced firearms classes have kind of gotten a little more. We've added one or two in each region over the years. More guys are starting to gravitate to that. But there are a lot of guys who, they come to the annual, they shoot their training rounds, and whether they need it or they don't want to take, I think some guys are concerned that they go to the advance and they shoot cold and they fail. If they do, they can come to an annual, no cost, there's no penalty. But, we would like to see more guys go to that advance because that's, a higher grade skill set and et cetera. It's a little more realistic.
We're talking about getting rid of them totally, though.
Right.
The other
That's the
Right.
point. That's exactly right. That's exactly my concern. I have to find out if there's another recommendation that could be made here that would provide some balance for those who are not going to be that successful. I mean, that's my concern here.
Well, the
just
annual.
another point too, with the annual firearms class, and this may be what John's going to say. They do a practice qualification using trading ammunition before they qualify with their duty ammunition as well. So we do give them that opportunity to practice the qualification course before they actually qualify.
Yeah, I mean, we could be reducing, because, on Saturday, and there's a lot of leeway on the instructors because there'll be a certain, these guys tend to go to the same class, same location year after year. So some classes I've been out at, most of the shooters are very proficient, so the instructors can run through more drills. They have a whole list of drills to go through on malfunction or whatever. And it depends on how well the class is doing. If you get a group where 50% of the class needs that a lot more refresher on the fundamentals of trigger control and sight alignment, then you're doing it takes longer and you're slow. And actually, they end up probably shooting less rounds just because the instructors need to do a little more of that one-on-one coaching. But so the pace in an annual class is really dictated by the skill set of the people coming in. And so even if we reduce the number of rounds, because we're tracking the ammunition used in our system, and you can kind of look by the number of rounds expended. Hey, this was probably a better skill set class because they shot almost all the rounds allocated. So the instructors were able to go through more drills and those kinds of things. If they didn't expend all the ammo allocated, it was probably a class that needed a little more individual coaching or, remediation. And, because sometimes remediation is you're putting dummy rounds in there and, it's you're not firing live rounds,
So you do track carefully then the number of rounds that go out to each range. And you mentioned something that is of curiosity to me. If they're coming in to prepare for certification, we're in essence we're paying for all that. Is what you're saying.
Right. By providing those training.
I like the idea that we would pay for maybe a preliminary firing that was suggested before they actually certify. But up to that point, I just wonder how much we should be providing support to. That's my question, I guess.
And that's where I made the comment that, the number of rounds may vary because we wanted to get a feel for what the board thought. Because we can go back now and sit down with a lot of lead firearms guys and say, hey, if we had to reduce number of rounds, what would you eliminate or where would you cut those rounds? To get down to the more technical of this is what the curriculum would end up looking like with 250 rounds or whatever.
And we do have our annual instructor update session coming up in June. So it would be a perfect opportunity for us to get with those instructors and discuss these things with them.
And we were planning on discussing it with them to say, if you had less training rounds, where would, what would you?
Well, on that suggestion, maybe we're not ready to make a decision on that particular item on
Sure.
the sheet.
Yeah.
And that's why I said,
Until we have that opportunity to hear back, how would you suggest we do this and have a reduction plan in place?
Right.
That's my recommendation.
no, that's why I said, we need, the board
and
needs
again-
more information.
Yep, we
That's
wanted to
fine.
bring it at a high level to you so that we could have discussion and
I mean,
take things back.
and to elaborate on that, there have been times that I've walked away from the annual firearms with ammunition, like you said, because there was no one in our class that needed the remediation. But if the remediation happened, majority of the time it happened with that one student. My question is if you cut the amount of rounds, does the class hours get cut?
Well, and that's something else we'd have to look at.
Yeah, we
Well,
have to look at that.
Right. I mean, and reason being, what are these men going to do for the other
Right.
20 hours?
Well, and again, we were looking purely at this level of cost.
Right.
Ammo is one of our biggest costs. And so if you were interested, as the commissioner expressed, now we can go back and get a lot more. If you guys weren't even remotely interested, then we weren't going to spend more staff time to get all that detail.
When you talk to these instructors, we're in this, what now, 14 years, 18 years?
18
years.
firearms.
I'm sure they know that Freddie Cantino's a decent shot. Should there be 3 types of classes? You have advanced, then would it be, but I'm just saying,
Intermediate.
right, I mean, if you had, like myself, I can't go to the advanced only in scheduling purposes, but I qualify to go to it, but I can't.
Right.
But those that have the remedial, I mean, I'm sure you talk to the men out there. There's times that I'm sitting there saying, wow, because of this guy, and as soon as I see him in my class, it's like it's going to be a long day.
Well, and I've been at classes, where there's 18, 20 shooters. I was at one last summer, and of the 20 guys they had in the class, or 19, there were about 10 that really, it's obvious they hadn't picked up a weapon since last year and really needed a lot of that individual attention. And there was one gentleman in that class who he probably could have stepped up and qualified cold. Obviously he's out shooting, he's proficient with his weapon, but that's the hard time. The hard part is because we can offer this training, but it's really ultimately up to them to decide which one they go to. There are a lot of guys who qualify to go to the. When you look at scores, there's a large percentage of guys who are way over that 88%.
Right.
But they continue to go to the annual.
And a lot of it's scheduling. A lot of it is scheduling. Rob, from a legal standpoint, what would happen if we just turned around and said, look, we're offering 250 rounds. You're going to have to start practicing on your own. This is the bottom line. Does that put us, or put the PCCD in liability?
Again, I'm not chief counsel.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You always think I'm the attorney by.
Well, no, I've always done that, but I'm just asking, where is she then?
Deborah is not here, so we will take that back to her to have that feedback for the next board meeting as well.
Because we need to know. I mean, anything we do here, we just want to make sure that the men are trained properly, that they won't get in trouble. And women, I'm sorry.
Oh, he does it all the time. I've given
always
up. I've given up.
But, okay, I just don't want these guys getting in trouble and then someone turn around and saying, well, your education was cut, and then they come after us.
How many hours are we talking about?
20.
20 for the annual.
Annual and the advanced are 20.
And then what's the qualification number of rounds for qual?
60 rounds.
60?
That's above and beyond. The 60 I have to supply because I carry different. They
Right.
want us to be trained with what you carry on the street. I'm not trained, certified in what you carry on the street. So this way, for insurance purposes, you have what you have.
The board regulations state the board will provide ammunition to the constable for use during instruction. The constable shall provide ammunition for use during the qualification test. So there's really, as far as,
Right.
Well, but the other issue is Fred brings up
Yes.
is, if you set a high standard and over 15, 18 years and then you reduce
Reduce that
that
standard, yeah.
as far as training, if we cut number of hours, even like, DT and basic, if we now reduce the number of hours, it's what are you cutting now?
yes.
What was in there for 20 years that now is reducing? And unless something radically changes, there's some big court case on use of force or something. I mean, it's usually things like that predicate it, and it usually adds training. It
Right.
usually never
That
eliminates.
doesn't
It
reduce.
usually
yeah.
adds training.
Right. And Major,
When
we're
something-
different. We go for 20 hours. I think MOPEC, you guys go in certified and some safety, but you're not there for 20 hours.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're traveling stuff in. What the state police does is we have a qualification period in the fall, or in the spring, and then we have a fall proficiency. So what happens is we go in, we do our qual, we have to qualify with the AR, the shotgun, our handgun, and any personal weapons that we might want to carry. But that's basically a 6-hour day that we do that annually. In the proficiency phase, we're doing more of jam clearing drills, shooting on the move, shooting from vehicles, shooting behind structures. There's some physical stuff where you do push-ups to get your heart rate up before you start the course of
Right.
fire. And I mean, I'm not in favor of reducing training rounds, and I don't know enough about it, and I don't know if it's feasible for you to take that 20 hours and split it into 2 8-hour days, so people are coming to the range more often than just coming in for once a year.
Right.
And our people are guilty of it too. Not everybody shoots in between their time periods, but at least you're coming in every 6 months and you know that you're going to have to do different things. Now, the proficiency stuff isn't really, a qualification. It's not like, hey, you missed the target, so now you have to reshoot. It's more of these are the type of drills that you could be doing on your own. You need to know how fast you can move advancing on target to be able to effectively shoot.
Right.
Some people are faster than others, and you need to know what that speed is. And I don't know enough about your qualifications, so I apologize for being ignorant in that regard. But to reduce the number of rounds, I'd probably even be in favor of if you reduce the time that you're on the range, but you gave people 50 rounds to take home with them so they could qualify on their own. They might be more hey, I got this box of ammo sitting here, and maybe I will go out on the range and do it.
You don't know a lot about concepts. And I'm sorry.
I apologize.
No, really. We are going to run out of money in 2 years. I mean, for our funding. We are not state funded.
Right, I'm
we
aware of that.
raise our money. The guys we all complain about, we go to school longer for firearms than the local police department do. But the other two, the nature of our beast is everybody wants to get out. It's what you talked about, the proficiency, that is all combined in those 3 days. The moving and stuff is in the advanced course, but it is tough. We have there was one time we had a chart of what type of training we have for all different agencies. Remember, John, you guys had it out there?
Okay.
And we were really high up there for the amount of time and the amount of ammunition. And that's my biggest concern is, from a legal standpoint, how do you go backwards?
And again,
Is there a requirement on the number of hours?
No, there is silent. The act is silent on number of hours, and the board established 20 hours for firearms because the act allows up to 40 hours of con ed a year. And so early on, because you guys, you know this, every hour you're sitting in training, you can't be on the street working. So the board was very cognizant of that, or it takes away from, a lot of guys have a regular full-time job, So the board established the firearms at 20 hours, 20 hours of the classroom Con Ed stuff and 20 hours of the firearms. And because they never really foresaw, unless something radically changed, pushing Con Ed to 40 hours. And so, constables are doing 40 hours a year between Con Ed and firearms. And that is a lot more than, now that being said, a constable is an independent contractor. Whether he goes to any additional training, that's up to him. Whereas anybody else, state police, deputy sheriffs, municipal police, it's up to their department. Their department may mandate, as you said, a lot of departments who, hey, we do qualification this time, then we do combat shoot where it's adrenaline, it's judgmental shooting. They might do 4 times a year. So it's hard because we don't have any say on constables. The board can say, you got to do this to get your certification. But what they do outside of that is up to them.
I'm glad I opened up the conversation. Can I also talk about another one on here?
Sure.
Yeah. Get ready.
The first one, the cost savings on increasing class size, seems to make sense. My concern would be for those training locations, the class size could dictate the amount of chairs, tables that are needed in a particular facility in a room. Would this modify their cost? If you go to 25 to 35, you're actually moving out of the classroom size arrangement. And I think 35 might be a stretch.
We actually have in the system, when the contractors put in a training location, they put in the max capacity for a facility. And we know that. There might be a certain Con Ed, we can only run it with 25, but we can look and see what locations can hold up to 40 or whatever.
And Commissioner, I would say 90% of our training locations could accommodate 35 or more.
I just want to make sure that we're not pushing
Oh, I
something
understand.
that's
Yep.
not
Yep.
worthy.
Well, and again, I want to say this is at a very high level. We're looking for the board's interest in any of these issues. And if you're requesting additional information, that's fine.
We will go back to
But we
the-
didn't want to, go down and that's a lot of staff time, and then to come back and you guys, not express any interest.
Okay.
And again, none of these have to be approved today. You can have us go back and do more research, come back with other options. But one thing I did want to point out too, under reducing the number of rounds, staff had also talked about if, I think I mentioned it earlier about removing the practice qualification during the annual firearms. That's something that actually could be done with the laser shot equipment that we have. So they would still have the simulation of the qualification course, but they wouldn't be using ammunition. They would be using the training guns and those types of things. So that's another option, but we didn't bring that before the board because we, again, like John said, we wanted to see what interest was there.
God's honest truth, though. No. Only. There's a feel of a gun shooting.
Mhm.
There's my weapon is calibrated for me, sights or whatnot. But no.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Well,
again,
and the
that's
thinking there,
little
Fred,
details.
half the battle with qualification is people knowing what the stages are.
Mhm.
I mean, we see this at the Deputy Sheriff Academy. They run through it and they do fine in the practice qual, but as soon as you start that clock,
Yeah.
they're forgetting. I got to
Pressure's
do a
on,
magazine
pressure's
exchange, and it freezes. They freeze up, and so they're losing time. They don't get all their rounds off or whatever. So part of that battle is them understanding what the qualification. Stage 1, I'm doing, 2 seconds, 2 rounds, magazine exchange, 2 seconds, 2 rounds, whatever. It's familiarity with the course.
Yeah, well, my experience in the military as a commander, the laser was functional only for sighting. It was not functional for shooting. And we got away from that. I don't think you see too much of that being done anymore for the very same reason you've identified. So I know that would be a cost savings, but then there's another cost in getting laser equipment, that kind of thing. It gets a little bit pricey too. So.
Well, we already have the equipment.
Yeah, we have the equipment.
That's already available.
And, and again, we're a high level on all these issues.
Yeah.
I understand with the firearms, but is there same with the firearms as with the schooling? And I've mentioned this before. Trying to save money, is there a way to challenge? I mean, look, I've been going through every one of these schools. I've been doing this 39 years, so I've been going for. Is there a way? Is there a way for the school? I've always thought this, and you and I discussed this, John. The young boys, the young men, and women coming out of basic, they're learning, and they're learning every year. We don't have an academy like the state police or the regular municipal police. We have a short 80-hour course. My feeling, and this is just personally my feeling, is your first 18 years as a constable, you should be going to what our basic, not basic, but our courses that we have. After 18 years, 3 terms, the constable's laws have not changed much at all in my 39 years. The landlord-tenant stuff has changed, a few things. After 3 terms, after 18 years, can we challenge? I mean, is that something the board's allowed to do? Are we allowed to challenge the course? And that would save a heck of a lot of money.
And, you know, I would put a couple things out there. The way the act is written, it allowed the board to provide waivers for prior law enforcement experience, you know. And of course, the board had the waivers for municipal police. If you were retired from PSP within 2 years, I think gained commission. I can't remember what the other deputy sheriff. So, you know, I think that we would have to look at that process. Obviously, you know, legal would have to look, does it meet the intent of the act as far as waiver and, you know, can the board say, well, if you've been a constable X amount of years, that's considered, you know, prior law enforcement experience. And so under the regulations,
right? With,
you know,
with
they
legal
have
updates,
right? So that would have to be a question for the attorney to look at and say, here's the intent of the act, this part, here's what the board regs, and you know, even if they said yes, we may have to change regs to make it clearer and meet the requirement. So that would be a little longer term,
right?
You know, but we can look at it. You know,
it's you know, cost savings, and that would be big numbers. I mean, I'm certain there's a
right, because you'd have to promulgate, you know, if a guy takes a waiver test, let's say there's, you know, for the 20 hours, it fails, now he's got to go to put a seat in a classroom, you know. So we probably would, at minimum, have to update our regs and, you know, that kind of stuff.
I'm just throwing it out there again. You and I discussed this 10 years ago, and now it's come to the time where maybe that might be more feasible.
Sure.
All right. Any questions on the eliminating of advanced firearms? The optional training, we discussed that too. That since we offered it in the basic, that if you cancel that, what? And legal is supposed to look at that.
Every year I hang on to keeping that, and I would maybe let that one go.
Yeah, I think what it was though is
because she gave us a chart further in the packet, and it's 4% of the population takes advantage. You know, that one may.
You know, one thing
I finally let that one go.
One thing I'd like to point out to the board, you know, if you adopt none of these down the road, you know, let's say we go through and you don't do any, as the fund, you know, dwindles, you know, we can honestly say we try and explore as many possibilities as we can in cost savings, you know, so even if we don't end up adopting these things, the fact that we've looked, you know, if we look at this, you know, allowing waivers, even reduction of firearms, which, you know, that's the last, you know, resort. We can show we're trying to do due diligence in managing the money by trying to, this is how much money we got, but here's the requirement under the statute, the board's responsibility to train and certify. So I think all these discussions, whether they're adopted or not, are good because we can show we're trying to look at every possibility to save money.
Yes.
You know, so when it comes down to if the legislature looks at a fee, you know, increase, somebody always says, well, you know, what have you guys done to save money? Well, we can give them a laundry list of what we've looked at and why we didn't select it or why we did. So.
Okay, and the eliminated printed training schedule, we discussed that for the
That we have to keep it.
right. And as far as the removal of scenario training for physical, the hands-on training,
It's such a small savings.
yeah.
But either way, I think we need to discuss that and make a decision on that because of curriculum for 2018.
Let me ask another question. I've probably asked this 100 times. Let's say we vote and approve some of these. Does that necessarily mean that it happens, or does it have to go to the general PCCD board? I mean, is it our decision to make this, or?
I'll be honest with you, I
I
think
don't know how that works.
some of these would, let's say we voted on the firearms because of the concerns you guys have expressed, they're going to have the same concerns. At one point, the previous board, about 12 years ago, they tried to reduce firearms training from 20 hours to 8. And that went to the commission for obvious reasons, and it was shot down twice. So I think some of these depend on, the mailed out, the paper schedule, no. But
Right.
I think it's depending on what.
Reduction probably would go out.
Right. Class. I think the more significant is the firearms issue.
Firearms.
Okay.
So, and again, you've already expressed you need more information on that. So,
The others would probably just go as an informational item, and if they then weighed in and said, hey, we got a concern about this, we cycle it back.
But if we approve some of this today, it'll happen without further approval of higher up.
right.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Do we have any
More
suggestions?
discussion?
Are we under some pressure to do this, or we're?
No, not
No,
Okay,
no,
then
we're not.
let's not be
Not at
pressured
all.
to make a decision we're not ready to make.
Right.
I would suggest that we table all of these for further discussion, and maybe between now and another meeting, we'd have a chance to refresh some of the ideas that came up today,
Sure.
and maybe make a better proposal for us to make a decision upon. So,
We're just bringing these to you because we anticipated the discussion, and you know how it goes. Because early on in the program, for us to get stuff up and running, the board was meeting every month, and some things dragged on a year and a half because of the issues. You consider whether it's legal or regulation, or does it meet the statute. So that's all we're trying to do is introduce these ideas today, and because as when we show you about the fee collection, there's some interesting information that will come out. Yeah.
And you two guys will get hold of legal and find out, the answer on that, because she is supposed to get that for us before. And, because we've asked about that, I think the last meeting, one of the meetings we asked if we cut back our hours, where does it leave us for responsibility for firearms? Am I mistaken? No?
This isn't
No.
reducing hours. This is just
Well, no,
Yeah,
if you reduce ammunition, that's gonna reduce hours.
just find other things to do.
we just have to be looking.
Yeah.
Well.
probably
For
more
you
laser
people who
shot.
take firearms.
All right, so we're gonna table this.
Yep, and that's fine.
Okay.
Where the hell is it?
I think you have to have a motion to
Do
table.
it?
Yeah, I was gonna say we need a motion.
All right, we have a motion.
Knock yourself
Yes, it
out.
was on as a.
Yeah, the only one I would probably say eliminate now would be the printed training schedule, but let's just do it all.
And that I don't think we can.
No,
There
yeah,
are too
agree.
many people who want it, and
We need it because they don't have internet access or
they don't want to print that whole thing out on their little
Right.
on their inkjet printer.
And again, we have reduced the cost of that over the years as well, because if you remember, there used to be perforated, all of the enrollment forms used to be perforated. Well, that was a pretty significant cost for that, so we had that eliminated. So, I mean, over the years, we have looked at ways to eliminate costs with this schedule as well.
Well, we've saved a lot of money in the last few years.
We have tried, yeah.
But expenses keep going up. All right, do we have a motion then?
My motion to table.
And motion to table, we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
It's my first.
So carried. The optional training class for, discussion items, constables, chemical aerosol, live exposure.
Okay, this
Do you want me to take that, Sharon?
came up recently. What's that?
You want me to take that? Or?
Sure, no, go ahead.
The curriculum we use for the OC had changed where exposure, before, years ago it used to be mandatory, then it became optional, and now the curriculum has become, there's no exposure at all. And so, it's there in a more detailed summary, but in talking with, instructors in the schools, there's mixed feelings on that. From practical stuff, or if we do a 4-hour OC class, you need to expose them towards the beginning of class because you want to make sure when they leave, they're not adversely impacted or they're not having some kind of reaction. You got to make sure they're, just from a safety, healthy standpoint. Plus the exposure, knowing what it does to you, because if, you use it, you may get some of it back, or the defendant may end up using it on you. You have to know what the impact is, what the effect is, so you can effectively fight through it or whatever. So there's, debate on both sides. And basically all we're asking the board is, where do you stand on that, whether you need more information, et cetera, but do we continue with the current curriculum where there's no exposure to OC at all? The constable doesn't take a hit even if they wanted to, or do we look for a different curriculum where that exposure is an option as part of the training? Because we're using it, we don't develop this curriculum, we use it, it's a, canned curriculum. So.
And just if I could add to, staff, we did notify all the training delivery contractors that in 2017, we would not have any live exposure.
And that's for
Based upon that,
Everyone
change.
takes it in basic.
yeah, everyone
Yes,
takes
everyone
it,
takes it
I
in
don't
basic and then
remember
it's
that
with the
at all.
optional.
and then optional as well.
Any response from a, or
And this isn't an action item, it's more to
Again,
inform you,
discussion.
to let you know that changed in the curriculum, and does the board have any opinion one way or the other?
My feel with live exposure is I've never felt a gun shoot me either. I've never been tased. Now I don't think this should be mandatory. Someone has to take a live hit with the aerosol.
Well, finding a curriculum where it's optional, because the last couple of years it was optional.
And now they're not requiring it or making it an option. It's
Right. Is it because of liabilities? This happened over the years?
Yeah, I mean, we got the
It's the same,
change, and we don't know why the change.
So the new curriculum is going to be,
You're basically being trained on it, deploying it, et cetera, but you're not being exposed to it at all, even optional.
Right, and the cans that they use are going to be
It's inert, right.
It's
Yeah,
just-
you're using
you'll see how it comes out in either a stream or a fog, the cone, but you're not going to.
It's not,
it's not.
It's not closing your throat up or your eyes.
John, what is the chemical, what is the chemical?
Cat.
capsium. It's basically hot pepper, the oil from hot pepper that's diluted down.
Right. And the object is you don't soak the guy. It's you get it in his breathing range, so when he inhales it, his throat closes up and mucous membrane and stuff like that. And it can be done with the inert stuff where the whole idea is don't paint his face.
Right. I mean, in training they use inert. It discharges, so you can see how it deploys and et cetera. Just like using a firearm. How do you hit the target?
Right. Personally, I don't feel.
I don't want to go back through another chemical training program.
Yeah, he did that.
It's the same as the CS chamber.
Yes.
I think there's a danger, you'd have to almost, I would think, have medical treatment available, you'd have to have an ambulance available, that's gonna create a burden of cost, a decontamination plan in place
Correct.
to take care of those who.
And we did all that in the past when
Yeah.
it was an option, for some constables.
Just out of curiosity, what does the state police do, Major White, on this?
You get hit in basic, but you don't have to do it after that.
everyone has to be hidden.
Everybody's hitting basic. Now, when we hit the cadets, they have to go through a series of events after they get hit. So first thing they need to do is get on their radio, call in their location, call in what they have. Then they move to another station where they pull out their Aspeton or some other less lethal. Then they encounter a suspect. They have to give that suspect orders to get down on the ground. Then they have to successfully handcuff them before the scenario stops. It's just to show that you can fight through it.
Okay, I got you.
I mean, when I got sprayed in '93, it was they just laughed and we ran into the shower and hosed off. But it's progressed over time. If you're just hitting somebody to hit them without the rest of it, it's pointless.
Yeah,
Okay, all
it is pointless.
right, agreed.
It's good.
And all we do on the recert, and I think that has to happen every 2 or 3 years, is give inert mace. Somebody stand in front of you with glasses on, and just to see the pattern, make sure that you're.
And so if the board does nothing, then we'll continue with the current curriculum that there's no exposure at all. So there's no.
I agree with that.
Okay.
I don't know if you
Do we have to do a motion?
Word, just let it sit.
It was just a discussion.
It was just to let you know of that change in the curriculum and to see if you had any.
And if you wanted us to research to find another
We'll just
curriculum
move.
that would be utilized.
We'll move along
If
as
the
long
board
as there's no
feels it's
questions.
important, I get the.
All right, we're gonna move along. What is the,
Okay, I'm gonna switch seats with John. There was a handout that was provided to you prior to the meeting, with a chart.
Right.
And John's gonna talk about this.
We aren't doing
Might
this
be
one
under
yet,
here,
right?
Major.
Cost saving.
No, we'll do that one
next. That one confused me.
the mouse?
Sorry.
Oh,
Wake it up, Earl.
Like next.
So where are you from?
Okay.
Okay.
As long as you don't kick me.
Now.
Oh, really? I grew up in the Northeast.
You did?
Yeah, I'm from Strasburg, originally up in Monroe County.
So the board, we had submitted to AOPC to find out some more data about the surcharge collection. And AOPC provided us the data, and I went ahead and looked at 4 counties. They provided for all 66 counties. Again, Philadelphia doesn't have constables. And the request was, from 2010 to 2016. So when you look at the chart, what I did was grab 4 counties for kind of comparison. First, I'll explain the gray headers that's the actual data that AOPC provided us. And then the ones with the white headers are columns I stuck in to just show some analysis. So if you look at the first one, Delaware County, we have 2010 through 16, and I'm just going to pick on 2016 to start. It raised a couple questions because maybe we didn't ask AOPC the right question, because when you look at count of dockets with server fee, and in a perfect world, if you times that by 5, it would give us about $190,000. We know not every docket gets assessed, at $5. Sometimes it's $1, whatever. The other thing I raised is that's a difference, and then what they have. This is what AOPC said for that year, and those dockets was assessed $174,000. So that's a difference of about $15,000. It could be a difference of some of those in there are deputy sheriffs or some other server fee. And so, do we need to say, be more specific about constable only? So there's a small percentage that's in there. And for our purposes, I'm not sure it's really significant. The key is the CETA fee that they say was assessed. So in 2016, it's $174,000. And then AOPC said of that, there's $118,000 remaining from 2016. The last column, so that's about 68% of what was assessed in Delaware County in 2016 still has to be collected. And when I look at this, when you look at that percentage drop over 2015, so we're 2 years out, it goes to 42% is still outstanding. And then it goes to 27, so 3 years out, it doesn't get down below 30. So one of the things it raises is, what's the life of a docket in Delaware County? On average, does it take 12 to 24 months, for us to for that docket and that warrant to get executed and we get our CETA fee? Also, too, when you look at some other counties, they have a much higher collection rate. Is it because constables are doing more civil? Because we get our CETA fee up front. So there's a lot of factors in here we can't, based on what they provided us. Again, it raised more questions, and I kind of listed them on page 3. Kind of the factors we need to go back and discuss with AOPC. Can they give us maybe a little more finely tuned data? On these dockets, how many are civil, how many are criminal, etc.
Before you go much further, with this first line, 2016 for Delco, when it says number of dockets with server fees, 38,000.
Right.
Number of dockets at 190, and then they're saying 174.
Right.
I think the problem might be is the number of dockets. They're saying 190,000, and
I'm saying,
we're
right. In a perfect world,
There's
if those were all constable dockets.
right. But what's happening is so you're saying there's 3,000 different dockets. They probably 3,000 warrants that were. It's their second time. They're reissued warrants.
Right.
That the $5 isn't added to. But and the next question is 68%. I know what's going on in Delaware County. There's just the sheer volume of constables on the street. There's only 10 to 12 of us on the street. There's 60 constables. A lot of them, just do out mail outs. We're transporting prisoners, and we're not knocking on doors like we used to. But are you telling me that by the third year, so 2014, those warrants, there's only 27% of the warrants that were issued in 2014 haven't been paid?
Correct. So that CETA fees, here it is, 3 years later, 2014, there's still 27% of the CETA fees from 2014 still haven't been collected.
But so you're saying 60% of the cases have collected the CETA fee?
Right.
That's pretty damn good, because on an average, we've seen it. Some constables organizations somewhere were saying there's millions of dollars in the CETA fees, the 190,000s. If you add all those numbers up, just Delaware County alone, it sounds like a ton.
Right. Well,
you can never collect all that money.
But the impact is, 3 years later, how long does it take for us to see that CETA fee, for it to really get into our account?
Right.
Because if you look at Allegheny County, the next one, 2016. Now again, they have about half the number of dockets, etc. But of the CETA fee assessed, 62,000, they only have 25,000 left, which is only 40%. Look at 2 years out, it drops dramatically.
But does Allegheny County? We were just working strongly with their handbook. Doesn't Allegheny County have a municipal court for traffic compared to like our county and Berks County? Like there's
right. Well, Allegheny County, they have several different, right.
Okay.
And this is what I'm saying. This raises a lot more questions. Maybe we need to go back to AOPC.
And two, guys, if Allegheny County has 300 constables, there's a lot more men on the street working than per se some of the other counties. Your county, how many constables are there in your county? Six constables.
Right.
I mean, it's
and again, the big takeaways, the couple of things I do want the board to see is it doesn't matter. When you look at the counties, it varies. But
by the third year,
1 to 2 to 3 years out, we're getting the bulk of the money. But you got to remember, for our financial planning, that's money we're not seeing for 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, but
do you see what I mean? So even if we had a fee increase today,
it's going to be 3 years until we see that money.
You wouldn't see a big impact because oddly enough, the 4 counties I picked, except for one, except for Lancaster, 3 of those 4 are some of the biggest counties as far as CETA fees assessed and collected. So just these 4 counties, or 3 of these 4 counties alone, if we could increase, how quickly we get the money, that would have a big impact. But again, as you said, Fred, that varies county to county. How they do business. And again, I think it does matter is the guys doing more civil, because then we get our fee up front versus it's 18 months later, when we finally get our fee.
And just God's honest truth, and I'm sure these guys out in the audience will tell you, in 2016, the Supreme Court came out that they can't put nobody in jail for fine and costs. So the district judge, and he's not here, the district judge's hammer has been taken away from him. So when a person comes in, they're like, I got $50. The seat is not being paid. I submit a bill to the county to get paid, and the CETA doesn't get paid because the county doesn't have to pay the CETA.
And that's the other factor we don't know, and how many of these was the constable fees paid by the county, so then the county doesn't pay the CETA fee.
Right, because there's a large jump from that 2015 to 2016, and it seems like sort of like that's when the law changed. So you guys the county's picking up a big expense, and we're not seeing the CETAs.
And so, you look over the course of 6 years at each of these counties, Lancaster. And again, and the other thing too is if you look at 2010, 6 years out, 7 years out, there's going to be a percentage of these that will never see the CETB
No.
for whatever reason.
No, they're just uncollectible.
They never find the guy; it's uncollectible. So, most of these were anywhere 10% or under, 9%, and I'm just saying that's probably those we're never going to see.
No.
So there's a certain amount of these we're never going to see. But when you look at it for these 4 counties over 6 years, that's what was assessed, about 2.6 million, and that's what would be still outstanding. But it's all these other various factors as to why,
Right.
Based on what they're serving, how the county collects it, how much of that is the county's paying your fee and we're not getting the CETA fee because the act says the county doesn't, collect it and pay it. So
With this program that they gave you, at the end of 2017, I'd like to see that year added to this because I've got a funny feeling that 2007, can you roll that down a little? 2017 is going to look just like 2016. It's not going to drop as drastic as 2016 went to 2015. It seems like it's almost cut in half.
Right.
But guess what? With the way the rules have changed with the Supreme Court, I'm almost going to bet you that that's going to 68% for Delaware County is going to be maybe 59%.
And part of the biggest issue, and this has been for the life of the program, we can sit and look at and see, money assessed and money collected and try and figure out where the shortfalls are or why. But PCCD, the board, has no ability to fix that because it's at a county level or at AOPC level or whatever the issue is. We can't take any action to accelerate the collection of our fee or make it a priority or whatever. So, this again is just a snapshot of these 4 counties. For all 66 counties, because they sent us the data for 2010 to 2016 for all counties, and this is AOPC's number. The CETA fee assessed was about 8.5 million, and AOPC is saying that about 1.5 million is still outstanding for that 6-year period. And again, even if you chop 10% off of that, it's never going to be collected. There's still a lot of variables there, and how can we improve that? Or who do we work with to try and again, to me, I think the biggest thing revealing is the time frame. We think of, that CETA fee was assessed, but it could be 18, 24 months down the road before it actually ends up hitting our account. So from a financial planning standpoint, that's one reason we're looking at cost savings because it could take, even if we got a fee increase today, it could take 2, 3, 4 years before you see that's savings and an increase in fee, any kind of a change in the account.
But it does come in, so
It
it's
does.
consistent. And we just now
It's
lagged.
a little slower than and in a
We'd
perfect
like.
world we'd like it within less than 24 months.
How
versus-
confident do you feel these are real?
Well, like I said, the gray headers, those are numbers from AOPC.
I mean, it's real with the money.
That
being
is
come
what
here.
they have said.
You've seen the money.
Right. So, and my other question too, just even a more practical one is, Fred and I were talking about this, and I wish the judge was here. He might be able to answer it. So when your fees get paid, you were issued something or whatever, the guy's indigent or whatever, so the county pays your fees. Does the clerk go in and take that $5 CETA fee off that docket? Because my concern is, does it then hang out there as almost like a false, it's giving us false hope?
I thought their new software made it happen. for some
Takes
reason.
that five.
Yeah.
And that's, again, those are questions that we
Yeah.
need to go back to AOPC,
Yeah.
the more practical, so we can understand these numbers that go, oh, no, that's a real number, or the CETA fee comes off when the county pays the server fees.
Right. And the other issue too is the docketed cases that if a person goes online to pay the warrant, the constable CETA fee, we were under the impression it's not there.
Right.
Mm.
Right.
It's
Right. Well, because it's never issued to you.
I know. I just thought, well, is that within 10 days the warrant's supposed to be issued, right?
Right.
So when it's issued, is the court behind in issuing their warrants or signing them? It's a catch-22. There's a lot of
factors.
But we've asked to have meetings set up with the judge and I with AOPC, and they have yet to.
Well, at the bottom there's some questions. I mean, just general questions. We have a little more detailed ones, but these were my thoughts. To the AOPC. You know, could we pick 1 or 2 or 3 counties and see how many of those CETA fees were assessed for less than $5? You know, it puts in, but when the guy comes in and he's paying, the judge says, oh, you know, CETA fee is $1. I mean, Judge Obiel used to talk about that all the time, that, you know, they can reduce that. So it could be a small number, it could be a larger number than we think. You know, is that significant or not? We don't know. What percentage of the CETA fee is never collected? I think if we get a little better data, we could probably figure out, you know, is it 5%, 10%?
Has some of the organizations out there in the Commonwealth, have they tried dealing with AOPC? Do we know any information from them, like about the $5?
What organization? Wait.
The Constables Associations, the different ones. I'm not.
I don't know if they. I know years ago the state association had talked with AOPC. This was probably, I don't know, 2008, 2009. They had met with AOPC several times on it and some other issues. But
So I mean, we're running into problems. Tommy's County, the traffic court, Lancaster, or Berks County, Reading, didn't they take their warrants from the constables?
no, I actually look at Lancaster. Lancaster did. So that was implemented July of 2016.
I thought Reading did too.
Lancaster took the criminal ones away, and constables were still doing.
I'm the president of Lancaster County Constables. They took all the warrants away.
They did take all
everything.
Okay.
Wow.
They
Okay.
took it all. We have
So,
nothing.
so look right there. So historically, you know, call it 16, 15,000 constables that historically serve. If that went away 100%, you know,
Well, the
It's
8,000 we're seeing, that's civil.
you know, it's $60,000, $70,000 a year. But I mean, how many other counties?
Westmoreland County just
Right.
took their warrants from the constables.
Well, they did that several years ago. Westmoreland, Lancaster.
Yeah.
Now
We're
North
fighting an uphill battle, pal.
Northumberland or Northampton. I can't remember which one.
What
They
county
the
is-
constables still serve it, but they work for the sheriff. So I don't know if the constable CETA fee is being assessed because technically they're issued to the sheriff. He's using constables to serve them, but
Are
you
they
know,
required to put? I guess my question is if constables aren't serving the warrants, they're not required to put a CETA fee? Is that what you're saying?
right?
And we don't know.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, and again, this is where we need to go back to AOPC. You could probably say, oh, hey, look, the CETA fee dropped off significantly in this county because last year they took away, you know, everything from constables.
Now, that question, John, is that on here, of those 8 you have, like something like that with loss of work to constables?
No, but we can add, you know.
Would you add that? Because I mean, that's a major thing. If constables, okay, if they're being given to police departments and police departments are using constables to serve them, are we still getting our CETA?
Right, no, that's the thing. Is if
I don't know.
For
Just
well-
if I'm working for them, are they collecting the CETA?
right, but and again, where the judge and I don't know is the warrant issued to the sheriff's office. He has to execute it, whether he gives it to a deputy or he gives it to a constable.
Okay.
It's the sheriff's responsibility. So I don't know if they're, you know, if I have you serve it, I don't know if they're putting the CETA fee on it.
Right.
That again, those because I can only think of about 4 or 5 counties where some hybrid of that has happened. You know.
So is there a statute or regulation that they have to charge or collect that CETA fee and turn it over to?
When the server is a constable, that's in the act. The issue is higher than that. If they're taking and issuing the work to the sheriff's office.
And what if when we were serving it, it still wasn't being collected or handed over?
And that's the issue. You know, we've always kind of wrestled with that issue. Various DJs we've had on the board have talked about that, you know, whether or not it's assessed and whether or not it's collected, there's no real hammer. And it's just like with the fees for you guys, what you get paid. You know, it lists out what you should be paid, but there's nothing in there in statute that says, well, here's the consequence for the county or the court if they don't pay you what's in the act. So the same thing with our CETA fee. There's nothing in there that says, you know, because the county can change how they do, you know, process in their county. You know, the president judge he has some control over that service of process.
I mean, we requested last year AOPC, you know, help us with some of the numbers, and I think we got charged like $1,500, and really there was no solid numbers to really do anything with.
Well, and this is where I say, you know, again, we need to go back because three of my questions is define what CETA assessed is. You know, just with any database anymore, you know, if somebody asked us, how many constables? We always say, well, do you want to know certified constables? Or because, as you heard Sherry mention earlier, we have a couple hundred guys, they have firm dates, but they're not trained and certified. So there's distinctions in our database that matter. And I'm sure it's the same way with their, you know, data. So is it maybe we just didn't ask the right questions and maybe sitting down with them and go, okay, what do you really have in there? Because if I say, give me all the dockets with a server fee, they're giving me everything. And maybe I need to be much more specific, you know. So those are some of the questions we have to.
I mean, I
All
kind of,
right, well,
you know, go ahead.
we're going to lose one of our board members very shortly. And so you're going to go and ask them these questions and try and get more explanation on those numbers.
Right, and see what else, either looking at their data or talking with them, can we get better answers out of this information?
And well, at least and have the judge involved with you, if you don't mind. I know you know most of the things, but there's certain things that
A judge helps, yeah. Having a judge available.
he does know.
Sure, right.
Thank you, John. What? I'm sorry. Cost saving initial form of update.
Okay, these are things, again, staff have been talking about different ways that we can save money for the program. So these were some things that the staff are going to actually try to implement as soon as possible as far as the cost savings initiatives. Number one is to limit or stop completely the number of publications that we mail out, and we talked about the training schedule. But this would be in relation to all of our training bulletins to magisterial district judges and president judges. Right now, we actually physically mail them copies of the training bulletins, but I was able to get email addresses from AOPC for both of those groups, and we will be creating email groups, and we will be emailing any of that correspondence out to the MDJs and the president judges now. So, and there again, it's a very minimal savings. It's $283.22, but still it's a savings. There are estimated costs for postage for the last state fiscal year was $780. And by taking that $283 out of there, we're hoping that we can save a little bit more money with that as well. And again, this is just an informational item. These are things that staff are going to be implementing. Number two is reducing the annual instructor updates to master instructors only. This year for the instructor updates, we were already committed to Penn State, and so it would have cost us more money to get out of the contract than to just go ahead and hold the updates at the Penn Stater. This would be for future. Staff are working with Penn State Fayette, our curriculum developer, to come up with another plan for next year to reduce the cost for the annual updates. Right now we are discussing everyone traveling out to Fayette, to Penn State Fayette's campus during the summer months. We wouldn't have any room rentals. We can get hotel rooms for the other schools that need to travel at a very significant discounted rate from the Penn Stater, where we normally have the updates. So, you know, it's like a $40 savings per room for each instructor. So there again, we're just trying to come up with different things that we can do to save money. The third thing is reducing the annual in-house instructor updates. Right now, we have all of the master instructors going up to the annual instructor updates, and then each of the schools are having their own in-house updates. The plan is to reduce those in-house updates as well. And there again, we would have a cost savings between $6,500 and $9,000 per school. However, when we have updates to the curriculum, we are losing the input coming in from the other instructors and those types of things. So we are trying to devise a way that rather than eliminating, we would be reducing. So there again, this cost savings, it might not be $6,500, it might only be $3,000. But because we need to keep the instructors involved in the curriculum, they're out there training the constables, on a weekly basis. We want their input into the curriculum so that we can make sure that we have the best curriculum that's going forward to the constables.
Okay.
So here again, these are things that we're gonna go ahead and try to implement at our level.
Go over number 2 again. It says masters instructors only. You're not going to bring any of the regular instructors in for this ever?
We actually haven't for the last
We
couple
haven't
of
for the last
years.
couple of
Really?
years.
Right, so
Oh,
each
no
school
kidding.
designates an instructor in the topic areas,
Oh,
so
okay.
firearms or general, and the idea is train the trainer, you know.
Got
We,
it.
we present the curriculum to them, get their feedback, and then they go back and maybe spend a day training all their firearms, if we were to change all the firearms curriculum, you know.
Okay.
So,
And then
I
that's
have
a
no
place
idea.
where the in-house instructor updates come into play.
we're just
but
trying
you're going
to,
to reduce those too.
we're just trying to reduce how we can do it, still retain that information input to the instructors and back from, but do it in
And
a more
feedback
cost
back from
effective
them.
method.
Because I remember going to Penn State one year.
We had a board meeting there, correct?
There were
Correct.
hundreds of
Oh,
instructors.
yeah, very big.
So you
Yeah.
haven't been doing it that way.
Nope, for
That was
years,
probably
we,
the
I had
last
no
year we
idea.
that was
did it.
probably the last year.
That was huge.
Yes.
There were hundreds of
That's
people.
when we have a lot of money in the account.
And then also just as a side note, for this as well, staff have been working on updating our class costs for no-shows and failures, and they will be updated with new class costs in 2018 as well. More reflective of what the true cost of the classes are. Okay,
Status, you wanna go right into that?
I'll go right into that. Status of certifications, as of April 17th, there were 1,219 constables and deputy constables currently listed as active and certified. Of those, we had 987 or 81% of our constables are also certified to carry a firearm during the course of their duties. Since the inception of the program in '96, we've trained or they have taken a waiver examination a total of 4,461 individuals, constables and deputy constables. And I will move on to the sets update. And again, these are just normal board updates. As of April 17th, we had 1,555 active registered constables and deputy constables. That means that they had a valid term of office and they're registered with the system. Of those, we had 1,147 which are active and certified, and they are also such users, which is about 94% of our active and certified constables are signed up as such users, which is great. We also we talked about this a little bit earlier, we have 1,019 who have chosen email as their preferred correspondence method of those 1,500, and we have about 473 that are also sharing their information online, and we have 56 users from the 31 county offices. And we're always trying to drum up more business with counties as well.
Is it okay
Any
to
questions?
contact those 400 people that are still just have never gotten around to changing it over to email?
Those are probably the 400 that don't have computers.
Absolutely, they're 400.
But yes, if that's something that you would like us, or the board would like us to do, we would check into it.
That's quite
I bet you of those 400, there's maybe probably 100 that are just lazy who
Yeah.
do have access, but get the
They
cost.
have no idea
It's gonna
that
be a
this is
pain.
even available.
Oh, we have individuals that go onto the library on a regular basis to sign up for their classes
Yeah.
that don't have
There you
computers.
go.
Okay.
I mean, so they are making the effort to use the online access, through the SET system, but they just don't have computers.
Okay.
So
Now, okay, status update on AOPC work group.
this was a layover from last time, from the last board
And
meeting.
that's what I was asking.
Yeah, and that's
We've
what you
asked
were
for
asking
meetings
before.
And they've never approached us about getting together with them.
Yeah.
Can,
I mean, Bob, do you have any updates?
Well,
Have
we
you had
talked
any
about this at the
discussions?
executive review session. Darren is working with the court administrator, Tom Dar, to try and see if we can get some movement on that.
please.
So we've had they've been willing to engage to get all this data for us, and we've had some conference calls on that.
But what would have been nice though is like, I'm not picking on you, it's just that the judge and I wanted to do it when these kind of questions were coming up. We could have said, oh, can you have this now, instead of us coming back and not having that information until the next meeting. That's all, it's.
Understand.
Information on videotape broadcasting of meetings, did we find anything? Well, legal's not here again. If the legality we're trying to, Rob, you weren't here last time, but we asked if we could at least have it videotaped instead of the webcam where it was live. It could be videotaped, and then the members of the association, or members of the constables rather, could go on and see the minutes. They could actually see the whole meeting once we approve it. She was supposed to get back to us. Can you find out about that for the next
Yeah, I
one,
will
please?
find out about that. I know there was discussions on that.
Okay.
I know she was not recommending that we post it for video download purposes. One, there's issues with then somebody being able to modify the video or take just snippets of the video out. So if we post it up there, people can just download it versus streaming it live. So she did raise concerns about publishing it that way.
There's no privacy settings where you can't not download things? I mean, no, I don't know.
People
You're
can
still
do
using a revolver,
anything.
Fred.
Thanks, John.
If it's posted out there on the website for video download, somebody can download it and then modify it.
Okay.
That was her concern with that.
I was just trying to make it to where at least the men can see that, I love minutes. They're great, but they're all condensed and it doesn't see the questions from the men out real, but all right.
We do have the ability that we talked about to make this an audio conference that anybody could dial in across the Commonwealth so they could listen in live if we wanted to do that. And that would be a no cost to the board. We've got the technology now today. If we want to do that.
I didn't know. I thought everything was a cost to us.
Well, it's cost to the Commonwealth of the agency, but it's part of the general services that we provide to all the boards.
Okay.
So,
Do other boards do it on a regular basis?
they don't broadcast them to everybody, but they do have members call in.
Oh, the members of the
members of the
board.
board
Oh,
members
that
will call
we
in.
knew.
But there's no reason why we would be able to change that and make that information publicly available to come in for just listening purposes. We have the ability to mute all the calls.
I totally misunderstood you. I thought you meant it was any constable can listen in.
That's
on the
what I
meeting.
thought too.
Sorry, I was about the board meeting. Yes,
Yeah.
we do that now. I think we actually
Yeah.
had the judge or whatever if it needed.
Yeah, well, we did, if he needed to be able to.
Okay. All right. Executive session? Were we planning an executive session?
Yeah, we got the RFP update, which is great.
Okay. Can we have a motion to have a? Can I have that motion? Motion to have an RFP.
Second.
Second. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Ladies and gentlemen, can you kindly just step outside?
One additional consecutive term member who serves by virtue of public office ceases to represent the class on which he was appointed. A new member shall be appointed. No constable shall be appointed or be reappointed or serve as a board member unless he is certified under this subsection.
Well, we know, but yeah, we have to be a certified.
Right.
But I swear on my decree, it did say.
It may say it on
and
there,
you will
but
serve
we gotta go by
until
that.
you
Right.
have been replaced.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Later.
it was just an update on the RFP, and it was all contractual issues. It was nothing major, and nothing was finalized. I just wanted to bring you up on that. Want to open this up to public voice. Do we have any questions? And with your questions, please stand up and announce your name so you can be heard on the recording. Ron?
Ron Quinn, Center County and Pennsylvania Fraternal Order of Constables. Just a couple points here and stuff, and I'll start with the main one that based on everybody's mind was about the fees. It kind of dawned on me some time ago and stuff that the way that our fees are collected, $5 per docket per defendant and stuff. It's basically just a single revenue stream that's basically being enforced from the magistrate's office and on up. Whereas because a lot of the magistrates now have been stingy, and that's being nice about it and stuff, on the issuance of warrants so that such fees could be incurred, we've now had to go out and look at other places. And a lot of our constables are out there doing work for other county courts, for other offices of those courts, state courts and stuff, a lot of prisoner transports and everything. And everything that we do, there's a docket number attached to it. Now, a lot of us charge that $5 CETA fee every time. However, it's been our experience that the counties aren't taking that out, even though it's for a different court other than a magistrate. And since there is increase, and it's easy to find, easy to see, because when a constable submits their invoice to that particular court or that particular agency, you can see that there is constable involvement. So if there's a docket and a constable involved with that docket, when it comes in front of the county, they should be seeing that there should be a $5 CETA fee coming out of here, and it should be, and basically should, so again, go back to our coffers there. But right now, the way the system is designed, and I don't know if it's an AOPC problem, I don't know if it's a county problem. But the thing is that there is an additional revenue source out there that a lot of us constables have been forced to also go out and try to supplement since there's a lack of warrants. And from what we're seeing here, those fees aren't being collected. And it's affected, basically, as you can tell with all the cost savings that you all are trying to go through, it's affecting our training. It's affecting our standards. Right now, based on what you were all talking about, you're basically talking about lowering the standards of the constable training to save money. When we're at a time here, we should be raising the standards. Okay, and I understand everything costs money too, but here's a revenue stream that's not being touched and not being enforced, and by law it should be. One other thing I also say too.
Let me answer that one.
Okay.
Let me answer that one. If I'm getting this right, you're saying the judges aren't issuing multiple warrants for a defendant; they're issuing one. Is that correct?
That's one main.
And that's the revenue you're talking about.
Right.
I don't know why he does that. That's his prerogative. He runs his court.
Well, it's not a prerogative. It's basically law. They should be, but they're not.
Okay,
not
but
being enforced.
The $5 surcharge by statute, if I'm not mistaken, states it's one time per docket.
Correct.
So if the warrants were reissued and we only get the fee the one time. The next issue is I know, and we just went through this in our county, working on that handbook.
Hold on one second. Keep in mind, we're doing more than just warrants now. We're also talking civil process and stuff.
Well, right, the civil process, it automatically gets paid right up front by the plaintiff.
But not through the county courts and not through the offices that work for the county court system and stuff. We're working those docket orders as well, and we're charging them the CETA fee, but they're not taking the CETA fee out. Is what I'm saying. Even for those processes, what we've done to increase our work has been to approach those courts and other areas and stuff to try to generate fees that do have a court docket number on it, but when it's reported and turned back to their individual counties, the counties can see that there's a constable involved with those courts, even though they're not magistrate, okay, and they're not taking the fees out.
Okay, so you're working for the Court of Common Pleas now, is that what you're saying?
You're doing work Court of Common Pleas, you do work, other courts you do work for district attorney's offices, any place where where it's basically the constable handling a particular docket case.
The legislation is for dockets for district courts, correct?
It doesn't specify.
It doesn't specify?
It does not distinguish between magisterial and Court of Common Pleas.
Okay.
It says per docket and per defendant named in the suit.
So then the next question would be...
But the next part of that same paragraph says
the county
doesn't have
pays
to pay the constable fees, the county is not required to pay the CETA surcharge.
And that's what I was trying to get at.
Exactly, but if a lot of, let's face it, in a lot of cases, up to that particular point, the constable is not involved. Once the constable gets involved to deliver the summons, the hearing notice, or whatever for that particular county or for that particular office and stuff, and they're now never connected to that docket number, there should be a CETA fee that comes out of that.
No.
Yeah,
actually, now listen to me. Right now, when you have a fine and cost warrant, which is issued to you, and you bring them before the judge, and the judge says, I can't put him in jail, we have to have an indigency hearing, and the guy has no money, so you turn a pay sheet into the county, and it includes your $5, the law states when the county reimburses us, they don't have to pay the CETA fee. And that's what the county's reading.
But I'm not talking about warrants. I'm talking about process serving and stuff for the other courts.
And again,
which is what we're doing for the magistrates, and they're getting the payments up front.
And again, as it has been since the act was passed, whose job is to enforce that? It's not, the board has no ability, or PCCD. It's always been the same thing with the fees. When the county say, hey, we're not paying custody, we're not paying, release or whatever with your fees, there's no hammer against the counties and with the CETA fee.
Well, when Fred and the judge get together with AOPC, maybe that could be one of the questions that should be put on there. because any case, even if it's to a different court, if the constable's doing work, they're going to submit an invoice.
And there may be counties that are doing it.
There are, a lot of them aren't. But it's a revenue stream that's not being enforced, and it's a revenue stream that this body is losing out on.
But we could ask. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the worst they could tell us is no.
Or at least give you a reason of why they're not doing it and stuff.
Okay. And
So
you had
the
a
other
second
thing-
one I cut you off.
Yeah.
Before. Go ahead.
And that would be what you're recommending as far as the reduction of classes to increase the class size for basic. Keep in mind, and you're projecting for 2018, constables get elected in the odd number years, which along with other municipals, which means then that after November, and we've seen who our new crop is and stuff, in the even number, that's when you're going to have the most people trying to get to a class, and you're basically talking about reducing the classes at that particular time, which would then hurt the amount of constables being able to have available to them a class so that they can go ahead and do their work.
Well, no.
Well,
Whereas if
we've
you
already
switch it
looked into
around,
We'd already looked at it.
Yeah, we
because-
only have, in 2018, there's only 49 constables in our system currently whose terms of office will expire. So we've gone ahead and looked at 2021 is going to be our next big election year.
Yeah.
So we will always project ahead and we have to have spots available for the training spots available for any new constables coming in.
there's quite a few constables positions that are open now and stuff that are being for election.
What I will say is we've done a good job tracking those cycles because we always have the 6-year cycle that's large, and then it tends to go down and then start back up before we hit that 6-year election cycle again. Bottom line with changing the class size, we still have to provide. For Con Ed, if we're training 1,300 constables in a year, whether we do it in 40 Con Eds or 60 Con Eds, we still have to provide the same number of seats.
Right.
So just because we're increasing the class size and reducing it, we still have to provide 1,300 seats. The same would be basic training or firearms. So we're very cognizant of that, and it may have sounded very superficial at this discussion, but as we said, we're at the interest level discussion on these issues, not down to the nitty gritty details.
I actually did the math, and it's a difference of 5 bodies.
Right.
You know, if you do it.
But my last point, thing to bring up here is what we were talking about in the way of cost savings stuff. I like the idea about the challenges, like Fred was talking about. But I would also ask the board to entertain alternate agencies where the constable can get the same quality of training, emphasize quality of training, okay, to meet the standards and stuff. For example, if it's firearms, go to NRA law enforcement firearm class and stuff, and do that. It may cost them, but again, give the option out there. Or because there are some constables who are pretty good at talking their ways with their counties and got good relationship and stuff, that they might be able to pick up some of the training with other various different law enforcement agencies, the same kind of training. In which case then, granted, it should be something that's submitted and everything, but if there are classes that would meet the same goals, and then keep the populations down and stuff like that, as far as the need for classes and everything, that could be a cost savings as well in the future. I would ask you to also take a look at that as well.
I would say that the board would have to be vested in that curriculum for those other entities as well. So that would be something that would have to come before the board, and the board would have to make a determination on whether or not that curriculum meets the standards of our training as well.
So basically, if we do with a county sheriff's course and stuff like that, and take the same kind of training and everything, even though you guys also dictate the county sheriff's training curriculum,
But different programs and different capacities.
Well, like I said, either as good or better and stuff. Okay.
Well,
what would be the problem? I understand where you have to get the clearance first.
Well,
right. Acceptance.
We went through it before, and the decision, like for waivers. The reason being is I asked the major at that time. I said, Trooper, if I was an FBI agent and just graduated from their academy and came and said, I want to be a Pennsylvania State Trooper, would you accept my firearms? And the answer was, in the same way I feel, you want to be a constable, you want to be a trooper, go to my school. That's the bottom line. If I'm not mistaken, it's
The board
for
eliminated-
insurance purposes, we all have the same type of training. Now, we don't offer a taser, so you can go outside and get a taser. We offer as an option the spray. You can go outside and get that. You start doing that, are they doing 20 hours, or are they just going out, shooting 8 rounds and getting certified? Then there's a question with the insurance. So I think as a board we addressed it at that time just to make sure it was uniform.
The board eliminated firearms waivers for law enforcement. We used to accept, if you're a municipal police, deputy sheriff, we'd accept your departmental certification. It got down to about 40 or 50 individuals. And the concern came up, the board kept bringing up the issue of, because MOPEC has a recommended course of fire, but it is up to that chief of police because all he does is sign a form that says my officer is certified with his duty weapons, basically. So if the police department does 4 quals a year and they do very intense training, that's great. Or if they go out and shoot at tin cans for an hour and that chief signs off, it's his liability, but then they were submitting that to us. And when the board, I think it's very interesting, when the board eliminated it, of those 50 individuals the following year, they had to take firearms. Only about 30 of them chose to do that. And of those 30, about 16 failed our training and course of fire first time out of the gate.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of vindicated the board saying where are the standards.
Well, but again, what I'm basically looking at is like Fred was saying earlier stuff. That might have a lot of water at that particular time, but I think because of the situations that we're in right now, it should be something that should be readdressed and see if the quality would still suffer or not. And if it doesn't, why not entertain it?
Who would pay for this other training? The constable himself? Are you kidding me?
You would be surprised what someone would do. I mean, if I have to go to an NRA law enforcement firearms, and I have to pay for it because I want to still be certified in that area, but it also carries the same credibility, can carry over into the constable training and save some time. It might be worth it.
Okay, well, we can look into it, look into the attention of waivers, the waivers of the firearms training. It's something, if the floor asks, like I said, we can look into it. And what else did you have, Rob?
That was it.
Anything else on the floor? Yes, sir. Name and...
Constable Humboldt, Adams County. I just have a couple of questions. First one, how much roughly is it per student for advanced firearms? We were talking about cutting that, so I was just curious as to what it is per student.
It's in those
I don't have the biggest.
Oh, sorry. Average class cost $7,634 for 12 classes. Average class cost.
And then the average class size is only 12 per class, so
12 and $7,600.
$667.20.
Okay. My question is this, and I don't necessarily agree with everything Ron said, but I kind of want to piggyback what he is. I've always taken the advanced class, and granted I also have 20 years as a military police officer, even marksmanship and training up and beyond. But with that being said, almost every single advanced class that I take, and I have taken over the last 7 years almost now, has always been, it seems like the group of guys that are in that class are more of your full-time constables, the guys that take this more of as a profession than as a part-time job. People that really truly take their safety for, they really want their safety when they're out there on the field, on the street, actually serving warrants and things like that. Versus I see a lot of the, what I would say, more part-time guys that take a lot of the basics class. With that being said, to piggyback what Ron said, I pay for a lot of extra training out of my pocket. I saw you were suggesting maybe most constables wouldn't want that, but the fact is when it comes to me going home at nighttime and having good training and an above average ability to do my job, I'm willing to invest into my office. And I think that if you were to cancel advanced firearms, I think there'd be a lot of constables out there who take it, who really appreciate that level of training that we get, which I think is actually better than MOPEX training, to be honest with you. And I think they would probably look for further, better training that they would supply themselves in order to stay proficient at the job that we do. So I guess my question is, before you decide to just completely get rid of advanced firearms altogether, would it be possible to look at a cost-saving benefit to say, well, we'll offer 2 classes this year or 3, but it'll be at the constable's expense? And it's not crazy to ask that because we already do require constables to have a certain expense to have this job. You know, for instance, you know, insurance, uniforms, weapons, things like that. These are things we can't do. We can't have. We can't do our jobs without them, and you already require them for us to have that.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah, it's something we can look into. What you're actually saying is, right, and then we still have control over the training.
Right. You
Okay.
still have the training. You still have the curriculum. You just simply say to the constable, listen, if you want to take it, we have to get rid of it for cost savings. At least it's a stopgap. Hopefully, they raise the CETA fund and things will turn around in a few years and we won't have to pay for it.
And like John said earlier, we have to address all the avenues. And we don't want to, we didn't make any decision. We will discuss canceling classes, but we have to show it to the commission that we're trying, we're not just sitting on our thumbs.
And then just one other quick question. This hit me while we were sitting here in this beautiful room. How many classes roughly, I know you probably don't have the exact numbers, but I serve in Harrisburg, Adams, York counties. And I know for a fact that I normally take my continuing education, stuff like that, in South Central Pennsylvania region. So it's either Shippensburg University, Dixon University Center, Gettysburg, a couple other places, Lancaster. I would imagine there's quite a few classes that are right here in Central Pennsylvania. And we're talking about cost cutting or trying to save some CETA fund money down to postage and stuff. So we're talking about anything we can save. The rent for these different buildings probably isn't that cheap. And here we sit in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania in a beautiful big room that is kind of, you know, this.
We actually have used this facility for, because of that, you know, cost. When we've done specific instructor training, the instructor development class was here because there's no cost for the facility.
So what about constable training?
Right, and we haven't explored that. We have worked with the contractors. In fact, IUP, and Jeff's here, I know we had to run because of the large number of constables. They ran some large basic trainings. They were actually getting the Dixon Center for free.
I've been there. Oh,
Right.
for free. Okay, I
Right.
was gonna
So
say.
because it's associated with the IUP and all the state school systems.
Okay.
So and some of the contractors are utilizing facilities that they can use for either free or extremely discounted, you know, and because that's come up, you know, hey, this isn't the greatest facility, and we look at it and go, but it doesn't cost us anything. So you know the balance is. So, but no, that's a good suggestion.
So I can't even begin to guess what it would cost to say rent at Shippensburg University or can't room at Gettysburg University or anything like that. But my thought is even if it's $500 for the weekend, that's
right.
We're talking about $280 in savings in postage. You know,
And some, like I said, the schools have been very proactive about seeking out those either free or discounted, you know, within their own school university system or associated, you know. So.
But Dan, I can tell you about using this room here. Nobody's in the office on the weekends, so we would have to have somebody come in and be here during the class times and those
which
types of
actually goes
things
to
too.
my second, my last and third question. I promise you. We actually spoke about this in advanced firearms this year that I already took and continuing education. So it's 20 hours, which always comes out to a Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday. What kind of cost benefit would we have of cutting it to 2 10-hour days?
There is one class that does that.
And that is another thing that we've been talking about for cost as another cost saving initiative.
Yeah.
And that's getting down into the nitty gritty. But today again, we just wanted to bring the higher level things to the board to provoke that discussion. But yes, we were talking about that.
We've actually been talking to the school providers, the training providers about that. Because it may end up only certain areas, you know, we'd be able to do that either because of the facility or whatever. But we are talking about trying to float some classes as 2 10-hour days.
Both for continuing education and in firearms.
So we also, they're not in the minutes, but I brought it up at the last meeting, and I brought it up when I was first on this commission, was the idea like the district judges. One central location, it's open for 3 months, the courses are there, and you could pick what you wanted, what you think, but it was all cost prohibitive. We're just trying to do anything we can to keep our heads above water. The family budget is really tight.
And I understand. That's why I go back to the first thing I said, which I just have to reiterate this. If the constable fund's not there, I would have to imagine we're done. Because we can't follow Act 49, then you can't certify constables. And if you can't certify constables, then certified constables can't do court work. We're done. So my point is that I reiterate this. I know a lot of full-time constables of myself. I don't want to toot my own horn. I love this job. I have a master's degree, and I still choose to do a job that you can do with 5 elected votes or 5 written votes, you know, in the office. I do it because I love this job and I believe in the office of the constable. And I would pay, and I'm sure a lot of the other full-time guys out there, especially, would pay considerably out of pocket to continue to keep their certifications up if necessary.
Appreciate it. Keep that in your pocket.
Fred's not one of them.
I'm not one of them. But any other questions? Before we adjourn, we asked to hold off on the election of officers. Reason being, I'm going to resign. I have yeah, I didn't want to get upset, but I've been on this board since 2008, fighting an uphill battle, health issues, and I'm burnt out. So this will be my last meeting. I want to thank everybody. John, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Motion.
All right. And I do want to say, thank Fred. He's been a very integral part of the board. When he came on the board was in transition. We were losing members who had been there for the first 10 years, and Fred provided a lot of continuity from kind of that old board to the newer board. And, because a lot of the same issues come up over and over again. I do have to say, though, when Fred was appointed to the board, I was a little concerned because the first time I remember Fred was sitting there, but there was literally about 200 constables in the room, and the issue was about training, and he and my previous boss, Steve Spangenberg, were having a difference of opinion. And I really thought either Fred was going to come over the table or Steve was going to come over the table. So the board meetings have come a long way, I would say. But in all seriousness, Fred, you've been, you've always provided a very good perspective from the constable. I would say Fred has always been very, because everybody else, county commissioner, judge, Fred's always been a constable who says, hey, wait a minute, what really happens on the street is this. Or, for the constable who's an independent, he has to think about all these things. So he's always been in favor of the constables, I have to say that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. My biggest thing is when I go out here, and everyone will know, I had no self-interest. I worried about the small constable and the big one. And it is a great system, but I'm tired of fighting for my money. And I don't know.
Are you resigning as a constable too?
No. I spent a year doing I spent a year doing the handbook in our county. And after the second meeting, within 3 days, they did open heart surgery. It's what killed me.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you for your service, Fred.
Thanks, Fred.
Meeting adjourned?
Yes,
Oh, we need a motion to
adjourn.
So moved.